K through 12 range, like there are a lot more challenges that are coming up with the kids. And so, number one, cell phones have like technology in general has like stunted a
Gosh.
lot of these kids and their
Mhm.
ability to persevere through challenges, right? And
Mhm.
it's like the moment you teach them and you test them, it's out of mind.
When she said this, I realized we are missing something bigger. It's interesting when we met, the first, we were kind of talking about what we did, and you said you were a teacher, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to interview you because I think teachers are the coolest people. And I really do mean that. Teachers are the coolest people. But you guys just literally do not get enough credit for all that you do. And so thank you so much for being generous with your time and offering to chat with me today. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get right into some questions I've had for you ever since we've met. Is that cool? Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Um, so first, if you don't mind telling folks like where are you from and generally like what state are you based in?
I'm currently in Torrance, California. I grew up here for most of my life at this point, and so um, yeah, I've just been here. I've I guess a little bit about myself. I'm Sri Lankan originally, and so I moved to this country when I was like 11 years old, and so a lot of like background of me is like having immigrant parents. It's kind of like pushed me to like continue to persevere in my career and like yeah, so like it's led me here, and so yeah, not sure if that's like a
That
question you wanted answered, but
that
yeah.
is exactly the question I wanted answered. So you were mentioning, your Sri Lankan background and immigrant parents inspiring you. So tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a teacher specifically.
So my mom was a teacher. My mom's a preschool teacher for all of her, most of my like from whenever I remember, she's been a preschool teacher. And so, or a Montessori teacher specifically. And so growing up, I had a lot of memories of like her like keeping me busy with like arts and crafts and like tracing and things like that even before I started school. And I just like remember being in awe of it and like loving that like she was a hands-on mom in that regard, but also like this is what she gained that knowledge and that experience from being a teacher, right? And I think I remember just being young and being like, I want to be a teacher because my mom's a teacher. And a lot of it was like me wanting to be an elementary school teacher. And so I like pursued that. Like there was a time that I was like, oh, maybe I want to be an engineer and like pursuing like considering that as an option, but then I think when it came down to it, like I'm a people person and I like enjoy interacting with people, and so um yeah, that's kind of like what led me here, but a lot of it is my mom. Like my mom was like a bit of my main inspiration
Oh,
for
how
it.
cool.
Yeah.
So was she a teacher in Sri Lanka and then became a teacher in the United States, or she became a teacher once she got to the United States?
She has always like we lived in the Middle East for like 9 years before we moved to the US. And
Mhm.
so during that time, like she was a housewife for most of it, a stay-at-home mom. But once like we were back in like the swing of things and she was getting bored, she was kind of like she went back to teaching, but she was a Montessori school. She was trained in Sri Lanka originally. And
Hmm.
so she then like that followed through when she became a mom and like as we moved around. Yeah.
You know what's so funny about you saying that? When you said Montessori school, I was like, oh my gosh, I had a Montessori school teacher in Jamaica, which is where I'm from, named Miss Sachi, who was a Sri Lankan. Like, I kid you not. And when you're like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if it's like a popular profession in Sri Lanka,
It
but
is.
okay, okay.
It
I'm
is.
taught at
It
that
is like
Montessori school.
very, yeah, like a lot of like my mom has worked in a lot of local schools, and some of them like you find that their directors are Sri Lankan. They're just really like the Montessori curriculum is really pushed in Sri Lanka, and there's like a famous train. I'm not sure who the trainer is, but there was someone that they like went through, and so there was this one main person that people in the city got like trained by, and so my mom like did that course, and so she's trained by that lady, and so it's like a whole thing because Sri Lanka is such a small island, and so like like where you get educated is like the main places are like in a specific area.
Got it. Okay. So your mom inspired you to become a teacher. And so tell me more because originally you said, you were thinking about elementary school and then you're a high school teacher, right? So tell me
Yep.
kind of where that shift and pivot came from.
So the shift came when I was in college. I worked at an infant toddler center for like for 3 years while I was like in during my undergrad. And so worked with a lot of babies and a lot of toddlers and had that like hands-on experience with the little ones. And so I always like saw myself being doing kindergarten. So never like older kids. Like I was like kindergarten, first grade, like that was like what I really wanted because I enjoyed working with little kids. But then it was like, I think at some point I was like not being like in that setting, I felt like not being challenged.
Mm,
And I'm a very like social person and I'm a very extracurricular, like I'm an outgoing person, extrovert. And so I didn't feel like my mind was being challenged. And I think like that is something that I've like always wanted. And at some point, I was like, it wasn't even about it because you do get rigor. There is that challenge in elementary school. There is that challenge in like, I was teaching, I was at an infant toddler center, so it's completely different because there's no
right.
curriculum necessarily, right? And so I think it was like my roommate, my sophomore year. I was helping her study for her calc class and I was tutoring her because I loved math. Like I loved math. I was good at it. I was not like a, oh my God, I want to be a math major, but I enjoyed doing math and I like saw it as kind of like a brain exercise. And so I just remember like working with her and she was like, "Are you sure you want to be a kindergarten teacher? Like
Mm,
you may be really good at, you may want to consider teaching math because she like really like I guess like that experience of me tutoring her really helped her with the class. And so that kind of like opened the door. And I didn't have any math background, to be honest. I was a psych major in college and I was minoring in education. And so that kind of like stuck with me. And then when I think my last year of college, that was when I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and like do the things that I need to do to be a math teacher. And so took my exams and like struggled because I didn't pass until like the third try. But, yeah. And hence here where I taught middle school for like 7 years
okay.
and that was hard. Middle school's hard for me personally. But yeah, then I ended up teaching high school and I love it. Yeah.
So when you're like, I was thinking back to those, like that time in life is hard. And it's so interesting that it translates into the teachers. So I'm just curious. So those 7 years in the middle school trenches, tell me about, tell me about that. Because from that experience with your friend, you were like, you know what? Maybe I want to do older kids. So was your first shift like, you know what? I'm going to do older kids. I'm going to do middle school, or were you like, I'm gonna do high school, but I'm gonna start in middle school for some reason? So tell me more.
So honestly, I think I took a year off after I graduated from my like program and I just kind of was like subbing here and there. And at some point job security is a thing and you need money obviously to get a
Hmm.
job. And so I think I like when I look back, I feel like I just interviewed, like I kind of took the first job I got, which happened to be a middle school and it was a private school and I didn't like wait. I should have just been more patient and like seen what would have like transpired. So it wasn't that I was like, oh, I want to work in a middle school. It was just that like it was the first opportunity that came. And this is where like I feel like being like my young self didn't have those conversations with people to be like, okay, this is how we work through your career, right? You don't have to take the first offer you get.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, everything happens for a reason. And so I just kind of, when I took the middle school position, it was just more of like, okay, um, this is my, like the first opportunity I got and I needed money and like things like that. And so, I worked at a private school for 4 years and it was an Islamic private school. I thought it was a really great experience. I enjoyed my time there. The experience of the kids are great. Like it was nice because you do get to have these conversations with kids, but they're also going through like emotional, like they're hormonal. They're growing and they're very impressionable at this stage of their life. And so, being I was a lot younger. I was like in my early 20s, so 23, 24. Um So when I had started, it was actually not bad. I enjoyed it. Um, but I think like it's a lot because you're also taking on their emotions. Like that's the one thing as being a teacher, because these kids, like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you're not a robot, right? So when these kids
Yeah.
are talking to you about stuff or they're venting, like you kind of have to hold space for them too, because at the end of the day, like this is their outlet. They spend most of their time here with us. And so like you are then like absorbing, like unless you have like, final like perfected your practice, like you are basically absorbing all of their emotions and all of their struggles, and you feel for them, right? Because they're also, they're human and you're human, and all of these things. And so I remember it like towards the like I remember just being like, whoa, this is a lot of emotions that I'm having to hold space, and I'm navigating my own emotions.
Hmm.
And it just being a challenge. And like, they're also like moody, right? Because like they have moments where they're just like they don't know how to control themselves. And so it's like their anxiety or their like anger or their frustration, like then kind of starts to like clash with you, because then you're trying to like also create systems that like are supposed to be helpful for them to like regulate, right? And so you're kind of also their parent, like in a way. And so there is that push and pull of things that you see a lot more in middle school. And that was challenging. Yeah.
Wow. So what, okay, so you needed, I get it. Same thing happened to me after law school. It's like, I just needed a job. And I was like, I'm going to take this job. And I got a job, right? Same thing after a year, although I didn't take an intentional break, but that's a story for another time. So I totally get that kind of, hey, let me just grab onto something and then I can figure it out later, right? So when did you make the eventual, you said 7 years. So was it, you know, in conversations with people, you met someone and you're like, oop, this is open, or did you start purposefully looking for a position at a high school?
No, I didn't purposefully look. I just so when I had always so my I went to the district I work at right now. I went to the same school. And so I had always applied because it was local, right? Like you when you're applying for jobs, sometimes it's also like local is like the best place to look for. And so I would apply to districts that were local. At the time it was COVID. So when I
Mm.
switched gears from middle school to high school, it was like that 2021 year, like 2021 when school started to open up again. And so there was a COVID fund at that time. And so I just kind of applied everywhere because I was like ready. I think I was at a cusp of like, I didn't know if I wanted to be a teacher anymore. Like I was like that
Mm.
frustrated because I didn't find fulfillment. And like I was struggling because also at the age of middle school, it's really like half the time these kids are having a hard time also just focusing. And so then you're trying to teach them curriculum, but at the same time they have to like their emotions, and they're like you have to help regulate them too. And so it was a challenge because I was then dealing with a lot of behavior issues at the school that I was working at. And so I never really got time to properly like give to like I never got time to like actually practice the curriculum piece, right? Towards like the latter end of my middle school career. Um and so I just got really frustrated, and I was like, I don't know if I want to continue teaching. Like I was at that point. I was at 7 years. I was like, I don't know if I want to continue teaching. I'm going to give it one last shot. I want to try high school. Like that was my thing. Like let me apply to all the high schools. I think I may have applied to a couple middle schools, but mostly high schools. And I was like, if we're just gonna try it out. That's like my last. If either I enjoy it or I don't, and if I don't enjoy it, I'm like gonna switch gears.
Mm.
Um, and so I think I applied. I didn't apply to many districts. It was like within the week. Like I had applied to my district, and within 2 days, I got a call back. And at the time, they were doing this whole COVID fund.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really apply. Like I only applied to like two or three districts, and that was it. And so like this ended up working out. When I was applying, I was put on a panel with all the different high schools. And
Wow.
so then I got selected by my old high school.
Okay.
And so yeah, so like and which is weird because that was always my dream to come back and teach at my old high school because I really loved my high school.
Yes.
Um and so it worked out in such a way that I got the job by the end of the week. And so um and I remember even thinking, because I had this conversation with my mom, because I had to take a pay cut because my district
Mm.
was they didn't pay at the same level as the previous district that I was at. And I was like, I don't want to take the pay cut, like it's not worth it. But then my mom like was like, well, this was kind of like, you were saying like, it's a you get there's like the stability piece of like you're not stressed out. You like it's a different ball game here. You're not dealing because here the kids are going to be focused on getting into college and so they are focused, right? And so you have their like they have expectations that if they don't meet, it is going to affect them because it is their next step is college and their future. And so she said you won't have the stress of like dealing with the emotions as much or the behaviors as much. And so yeah, I ended up taking the position and I honestly like I love it. Like I am really grateful and I always am just like I feel like it was like a long time coming and I just feel at peace. Like I feel like this age range too, like they're getting into like, their early adulthood life. And so they're at that latter stage of their adolescence. And so when you have conversations, you're kind of having real conversations with the kids while at the same time teaching them content and making a difference in their life. And so it's really a very fulfilling. Yeah.
So I was, so that what goes to one of my questions. What do you love most about being in the classroom? But I think you answered that, right? It's like you're
Yeah.
in this phase right between you're in young adulthood, coming of age, and then you get to shape that. But now these kids are more focused. And so so is there anything else that you love about being in the classroom at this time? Like this time of their lives or about teaching in general?
So like a lot of I'm very intentional with my practice. Like I want kids to feel safe. Like that is like my big thing because like regardless of age, right? Like kids want are still going to be going through things even in high school, right? They're still
Mhm.
to some extent impressionable where they care about how people see them, they care about their voice. Like, there are still kids that are like, I don't want to raise my hand, I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to feel stupid or I don't want to like make people stare at me. And I'm like, no, no, no. We're trying to build um confidence and we're trying to build uh just like self-worth and advocacy and like all of that stuff, right? And so for me, like what I intentionally go in is like making sure that my kids feel safe in my classroom. And when they do, it makes me feel really good because then I'm like, okay, I know I'm creating like a nurturing environment they can then um where they can then thrive. And like that's the goal, right? So, because I also teach math, by the way, which a lot of the kids hate. Like they're like, this is hard. They come in every day and they're like, Miss, we don't want to do math. But then they'll say, oh, but I don't mind coming into your classroom. And I'm like, okay, 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 we can do that. We can do that. We're okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, so because it's hard. I mean, it's hard for the kids. Like I said, they are also human and they've got like I feel
Absolutely.
like the education game is like completely wild now compared to when we were in school, where like it is harder for a lot of these kids and there's much more expectations being put on them. And so I feel like I love just being able to be a safe space for them and be able to be like, here, we're learning something, but you're also like a human and a person here and and like, yeah, I think that's like a big thing, like them feeling safe and wanting that, and like me trying to make sure that they feel that way, because
Mhm.
then I feel like, okay, I'm in a good spot. So I enjoy that, I guess.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
So you've talked about kind of what you're teaching them, right? So how to show up, how to be present, how to not be afraid. What are some things that you've learned from your students over the years?
I mean, I feel like I learn from them all the time. Like they're just I feel like this is something I feel like I've learned a lot from the generation and I applied to my own personal life, but I'm like, they literally know their worth, right? And I feel
Mm.
like they know what they deserve and like they don't settle for less. And it's like even when they approach things, they're like, no, like even something I was like noticing, this is something completely random, but like friendships, like because I have real conversations with these kids. And so they'll tell me things like, they'll have like arguments with their friends, but they don't like cut their friends off. And I'm
I
like,
love that.
how do you like, versus like I remember being younger and being like, I'm scared to voice my thoughts because I don't want to create a disruption in the friendship or the group or whatever. And I remember just like being in awe of some of these kids that because they call each other out on their crap and they're still moving forward and they're still keeping those relationships and those bonds and it's like impressive. So I'm always like, wow, like, and then they tell me, no, you have to be able to like speak your truth and da, da, da,
Speak
da. And I'm
your
like,
truth.
okay, okay, I see you. I see you. I'm gonna take that and put it in my pocket too, right? So, um, yeah, I think like that's something small, but like there's a lot that I learned from them. Um, but it's also like resilience. Like I think these kids they do a lot. Like I said, like they are doing extracurriculars and they're coming home late and they're still doing their homework and turning in their work and like getting ready for tests and they show up to school and they like succeed in it. And I'm like, yes,
Mhm.
if they can do it, we can do it too, right? Like we can all like life is hard, but like keep yourself and they're keeping themselves occupied and they love keeping themselves occupied. And it's like they do it because they love it. Like, and I'm like, I would have been like, I want to go take a nap after
Right?
school, but they're out here like, we're tired, but I'm gonna go play a sport.
Mhm.
And because I enjoy it and I love being on the court. And I'm like, cool,
Mhm.
So yeah.
I love that lesson. Like continuing to push through for the love of things. I felt like in our age group, it was all about like, I need these things because it needs to go on my resume to get into the best school possible. It was definitely not as much about loving. Like, I love this sport, I love that sport. And I also love the lesson about not canceling because I think we're in such an extreme cancel culture right now. And it sounds like this generation coming up is like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I won't cancel you, but I'm going to say what I'm going to say and you're going to receive it, which I think is something that's so needed right now. So I'm glad to hear that they're the next wave that's coming up. Um,
Yep.
so what is one thing that people often misunderstand about teaching in general, whether it's parents or people who are looking to go into your profession?
I mean, I do hear, okay, on the positive side, I do hear that people like see like that it's hard and all of that stuff, but like
Mhm.
I do feel that there is like an undervaluement of teachers, right? Like we
Absolutely.
basically are not like sometimes even with parents, it's like, we see these kids, but at the end of the day, like there's a lot of thoughts that come to my head when you ask that question. But like one thought that I have is like we're literally shaping these kids. Like they spend most of their time here in school. Like so they're interacting, like we are what we do in class has to align with what these parents are also like, if we are trying to like set a certain structure and it isn't like being like supported at home, then it like really does like have an impact, right? So like for instance, it's like we want to help kids with their time management. And so like after school, it's like, well, how are you time managing? Because if you're not time managing in a like proper
Mhm.
way, then it's not going to really help the school setting or help with you being in school. And it's also not going to help you with being successful. And so sometimes I feel like some parents will, I just remember when I was at one of my schools that I worked at, not the current one, that like the parents are just sending the kids to school being like, well, the teachers are there to take care of things. But I'm like, that doesn't help. Like, you have to then recognize that, like, we are putting into your kids' academic growth. And, like, if you don't try to support them at home by giving them the space and, like, creating the time for that, then it doesn't help. It's not just like, oh, let me send to school, let me dust my hands off of my responsibility. That's not it. It's also what you do with it after they're done with that time. And so, I think like that's a big thing because it really like how these kids like approach certain things comes from home. And so when parents are like, well, they're supposed to learn this in school, I'm like, no, it's like a overall, like it's all across the board. And
Mhm.
I think that like it doesn't just come from us. And if you are emailing me saying, hey, why is my kid struggling? Well, let's ask you, like, don't ask me this question because, like, I am, like, on my end, in my head, I'm like, I am doing X, Y, and Z, but is that being supported at home? And that's not on me, that's a you problem. And, like that to be kind of, like, just to be blunt about it, like, that's what it is. And so, um, I think like that's a big like not misconception, but a lot of like I think challenges, I guess I would say that I see. Um, and also a misconception because they expect us to be able to like handle all of these things. And I'm like, we teach them one thing and like one class. Like I see them for an hour every day, 5 days a week. Um, and so like I can only do so much. And I think like and also that's the other thing with teachers is that people don't realize that we're also working like I was at work till 5:30. Like I've been at work till 5:30. We only had a 3-day week, but every day I've been at work till like 5:30. And it's a lot of it is planning, grading. Like we're also human. Like humans need brain breaks, right? Like as anybody, like kids need brain breaks, we also need brain breaks. And so there is that thing of like when we talk about like, salaries and like insurance coverage and just like benefits in general, I feel like people kind of don't see that like we actually do a lot. And I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but like the concept is we do a lot. And like I have had to like create a structure of like I don't want to take work home because I need that separation.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you can grade on the weekends." And I'm like, "No, I don't that you don't bring your work home. So why should I bring my work home?" And so it's that kind of concept. And so that like I hear a lot and I'm like, "No." So yeah, there's like a little bit of those two things.
I like that you mentioned the hours because that's a misunderstanding. I wouldn't even say a misunderstanding. It's just something I never thought about. Like, obviously, there has to be grading and planning, like planning that comes on the front end and grading that has on the back end. So you mentioned leaving at 5:30, but when does your day start?
So I think like obviously you have contractual hours, but for me my day starts at around 8 o'clock at work and I'm usually like I'm only supposed to be there till when the kids get out.
Mm-hmm.
So, the hours that we're getting paid for is technically I think it's either 8 or 8:30 to 3:20 or 3:30, right? So like in that time I'm supposed to teach 5 classes. I'm supposed to prep my classes for the next day or the next week, and I'm supposed to grade 5 different classes worth of assignments, which depending on the day, and I've got 100 and what, 60 plus 100, between 160 to 170 kids. So, like, and you can't, and that's the other thing. And when you're teaching math, like we're moving away from like just quantitative things. We're looking at the quality of work. We're looking at like in-depth things. And if you want to be giving each of these kids like, like the best version of yourself when you're grading, then you have to be number one in the right mindset. And then number two, you need to have the time for it. And so that's what I think people don't understand is that like teachers are constantly like if you're tired, that's the other thing. Like you're not going to grade the best. And so sometimes kids will be like, "When am I getting my test back?" The day after their test, and I'm like, "Honey, I have like 150 of y'all, like plus. Like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying 150, but I'm like, what am I supposed like how do you want me to like I'm also taught like I am very transparent about that and I tell the kids like I am a human. I am tired. I don't want to grade your work with the wrong mindset. So it's also just like that that is like really hard to like navigate, and also having parents sometimes email and be like, well, when are like you haven't upgraded the homework, and I'm like, yes, because I'm trying to create this instead so that I can also, like it's just a bunch of like time management things on my end as well.
Yes.
But yeah, at the end of the day I have to take in a couple of hours out of my own time to basically get things done. Yeah,
Wow.
and we don't get compensated for that, so it's like you know
That is crazy. Like you would think it'd be okay, you get this base pay for those hours, and if you have to go beyond that, maybe there'd be additional compensation because, oh my
yeah.
goodness. And it's no
And
secret.
like
I
that
think
is
we're,
also,
no,
yeah,
please go.
no, country, sorry.
I'm not just gonna say, and it's no secret that teachers aren't the best paid profession at all. And some like it's even more shocking, but please finish your thought.
No, and like my concern with all of this is like you have to think big picture, right? Like how is the education system going to be 10 years from now, it's 5 years from now, right? And so the idea is like even we've seen this, like this is when teachers get complacent and then they just like start not to care and they don't
Mhm.
give that they don't like, they get comfortable or they get like, and people say, oh, you're getting comfortable, but it's not about comfort. It's just they become like, to put it in blunt terms, like I feel like there's a level of jadedness that comes through because it's like, what are you like, you're doing all of this for what? To get more criticism, to get more thing. And like being a teacher is also being in the customer service industry. Like you
Yeah.
also have to then
Mhm.
like cater and you can't say the wrong thing because I think the moment you say something, even if it's the honest truth, you have to put it in the best way and best form. Otherwise, parents are gonna have a hissy fit about it, right? And it's like you have to like navigate all of this in the correct way while you're being human too. And so I feel like it's just an interesting practice. And my concern with all of this is that like with the lack of compensation, with the work hours, with the expectations that are being put on teachers and how we are supposed to approach, the education system, how that's going to be for teachers later on, because like this is when teachers get jaded and want to leave the profession.
Right.
And that makes me sad because I'm sitting here like I'm actually very intentional with like I want to do this for the kids. Like I didn't become a teacher for the pay. I became a teacher because I enjoy being with the kids. I enjoy being able to have these real conversations with the kids and then be able to like support them because I'm a believer of like you give forward and it'll eventually come back full circle, right? Like that's the concept. And so or it'll keep giving. And so it's like a positive train that you're like, passing on the baton. But yeah, I don't, and like I actually just had a conversation with a colleague yesterday where we were talking about how like even in college things are harder now for the kids, but on the like K through 12 range, like there are a lot more challenges that are coming up with the kids. And so number one, cell phones have like technology in general has like stunted a
Gosh.
lot of these kids and
Yeah.
their ability to persevere through challenges. Right. And
Mhm.
it's like the moment you teach them and you test them, it's out of mind. Like they forget. Whereas when we were in school, it's like we kind of had to carry stuff on to the next year. And like there was the expectation that you got to pull your weight. So a lot of the instant gratification of like technology and the instant results that they're getting, it's kind of like stunting these kids'
Mhm.
ability to persevere and hold on to quality knowledge. Um, and that's not to say that there are nobody that does that. It's just that the majority now struggling, which is then we as teachers have to then lower our expectations to accommodate. And so then the rigor is now like this for unlike it's not proportion. And then when they hit college and they're taking their first math class in college, they're struggling. And so it's just a very interesting trajectory. And like it's just I'm curious to see how it like um transpires in the next couple of years, I guess.
Same, especially with this whole AI stuff. I'm guessing kids are not supposed to use it or not allowed to use it. And I heard through the grapevine, I don't know if this is only at the collegiate level, that there's like AI checkers now to make sure the kids are actually doing the work themselves. Because I assume they still have standardized testing. So when you get in that room, there's no chat GPT or whatever to help you take, the math portion of that. People are still taking the
Mhm.
SAT, right? Yeah, that's still a thing. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So interesting that you bring up the whole
No,
technology
even with
thing.
so like even with that, right? Like I'm not like technology is always going to be improving. And so like there was once that the kids were like struggling on a question in my class. Like I had like given them like a investigative type question and I didn't give them the answer and I wasn't helping them. I was just walking around seeing how they engage. And at one point, like I never said don't use phones. I never said don't use technology, right? And a lot of them just don't use it. But I'm like, it's not
Hmm.
to like, I don't, even when on homework questions, I'm like, if you don't get something, it's okay to use AI or use technology. Just don't use it to just, oh, let me just, oh, I see how it's done. Let me copy it down. It's use it to help you learn. And it's like, how do you use these resources? Because it's supposed to support your education. It's not supposed to hinder it or like be like a like a feeding spoon. Like that's not the concept, right? Like I always tell the kids, I'm like, it's how you use technology. Like if you're using it to write your essay, use it to get ideas, right? That you can implement into your pieces, but don't use it to just like copy paste. That's like where the problem which is this is where the kids then like lose the purpose of these resources, right? And so I did have a conversation recently, a couple weeks ago, actually, with the kids, and I was like, you can use it. I've never said don't use technology. I just don't want you to copy paste it. Like, figure out how it's done, right? And then, like, see how I did it in class. Does it match? Is there something different? Like, be critical with how you approach these, like, options that you see online. Yeah.
So using it to help you learn or how to think, teaching you the logic, but not te giving you the answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. I think actually we're all going through that right now, at least in my profession, the same. It's like the balance between having it just give you the answer, which is usually it's like 50% wrong or more. Um, or help you think through things and then taking that output and then you as a human being deciding kind of where to take it. So I'm glad that you said that because
Yeah.
I think even I sometimes who I don't have any kids, but I'm worried about the kids. Like we had to learn everything. We had pencil and paper or pen when we got fancy and older. That was like when you really matured. And that's how we did everything, right? I had calculators in school, and that was the extent of my technology. Cell phones were not a thing in school then.
Hmm.
So it's just so fascinating to me to hear about like this whole cell phone in class. I'm like, cell phone in class? What do you do with that? Very interesting. Okay. Well, I know we're coming up on time, and so I want to get through a few last questions that were burning for me. So I'll kind of
Yeah.
ask them lightning round style. Um, what's a moment or story from teaching? And I'm sure there have been many, but maybe the one that comes to mind that has really stuck with you.
Well, I can't think. I'm like, oh, I don't really have a moment that's like coming to my mind right now. I it's always, I mean, I think it's just nice. The moments that I think it's just like being able to be more than a teacher to these kids, like being like a mentor to these kids, right? Because like they're learning, but they're also being vulnerable in your classroom because like they don't know, and you are literally they're literally at your like, you're the one grading them, you're the one teaching them, and so if they don't know, it's like they have to be very vulnerable. And I think for me, it's just like being able to see growth in kids, like kids who are scared and nervous or have anxiety or like struggle with that, and being able to just like be positive with them and see the results at the end of the year. Um, that's usually what usually sticks out to me, because then you see growth and you're like, oh, I had a hand in that. But like, not that it's all on me, but it's like they put like I was able to nurture that, like nurture their ability to get there. Because actually now that I'm talking about it, there is a girl that I remember I taught, like I know her family, like I met her mom, I've taught her sister. And she struggled with math. Like it was my second year teaching at the high school level, and she struggled intensely with math. Like it was just not her thing. And I remember I was like, look, you don't have to be a math person, and you don't have to be the greatest at math. Like at the end of the day, you just need to get through what you need to get through and pass the class.
Mm.
And in the end, like you may not even be a math person in college, but like it is what it is. And like then like I think it was like a couple, like either this year or late last school year, it's like I met with the parent, and the parent was like, she struggles so hard, but like she gets it now.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, sometimes it just takes time. Like our brains are not like, there have been so many moments as an adult myself and as a teacher myself that like something would never make sense to me. And I'd be like, this was hard, but I get it now as an adult, right? Like, and I think like even something as simple as I tell the kids, I used to count on my fingers up, and I still sometimes count on my fingers as an adult. And the shortcuts of adding and subtracting would be super duper hard. So I would share that with the kids and be like, well, I wasn't like I didn't just magically be like, oh, great at math, right? It
Yes,
like
yes.
your brain has to develop. And so I just remember being like very positive with that girl, and just telling her, hey, look, it's okay. And like she took the positive talk and she implemented that into her life. And then she also like shared that with her own mom when her mom went back to school. And like then she was also able to help her mom out when her mom was doing some basic math class or something like that. And I think like that, I remember just being like, oh, that's like such like, oh, I'm happy to hear that. But it's also like I put credit on the kids in that regard, because I'm like, yeah, I had a take of like being positive with them, but they're the ones that cultivated all their like, they were patient and they were positive, and that's what helps.
And that is
Yeah.
so cool to see it. Like, I mean, like you said, it takes a village, right? But the fact that you taught the sister, you knew the family, then this particular kid, she was able to help her mom as if there was a whole family effect from your lesson. I love that. That's very
Yeah.
beautiful. How do you stay like inspired, patient, balanced? Is it the summers where you're just like, whew, or is it like what is it that keeps you recharged to keep going?
I'm a giver by like nature, and so I love to I think I need to like reset obviously, and I need some me time here and there, but I'm an extrovert also by nature. So for me, being with the kids and being able to interact with them is a fueling, like I get fueled by that too. Because I'm not just teaching them math, and sometimes like after class, like in between classes at lunch, like they come in and they'll hang out, and so we have like real life chats. And so it's like it's nice in that regard. I think that's what honestly keeps me fueling. It's the fact that it's a people person industry. Um, and that's like me, that's like what I need for my own recharging. Yeah.
It's so funny. It brings me back to when you were saying like you re guys really are in customer service. Like people should really say customer service and teacher, guidance counselor, mentor, customer service teacher, all the above.
Yep. Yep.
Um, what's advice that you would give someone who's thinking about becoming a teacher?
I think understanding that, like you're teaching humans. You are a human and you're going to be teaching a bunch of humans. And so understanding how a human functions and understanding that, like, you're not here to just be like, let me check this off your list of academics, right? Like, oh, you need to know, like in Algebra 1, it's like you need to know functions and you need to know how to do a linear equation. It's like, no, no, no. Like, you also have to understand that they are learning this, but they're also a human. And I think, like, if you understand how a human works, and being on like and I think this is why like I love the fact that I did psychology. I remember it being intentional with also taking psychology because my school didn't offer an education degree. Um and it was like I was like, okay, I had to pick something and I decided to do psych because I was like, I want to understand how people work. Because if I understand how people work, that's only going to help me with how I navigate my practice.
Yeah.
And I think that is like that is really important as a teacher because you're not going to see results if you just teach them and you're like, why aren't you getting it? Like, no, you have to kind of be patient and understand that like if you're a teacher, you are literally customer service, which means you also need to understand how each of your kids are going to be different. They're going to be grasping knowledge different. Their backgrounds are different. They come from different social economic status type situations. You don't know what their family life is. So you have to kind of come with a level of empathy and grace and recognize that it's not just your practice of teaching, it's a whole human industry. And I think like if you're going into teaching, like keep that in mind because that's only going to help you in your practice. It's humbling because you're always learning something new and you're always refining your practice as you go. I'm now what 12 years in, and so I feel like I'm going on my 12th year, and I feel like I've learned something new every year. And even like at the beginning of the year, it's like, you're constantly questioning how you approach things because you're trying to just be better at it. And so, and also keeping that mindset of like you're always going to learn. So don't think that like the way you're doing it is the only way and have that growth mindset. Because that's a growth mindset we have for the kids too. So I think that you are going to have that expectation for kids, but you yourself should have that growth mindset because there's always, you may be doing something and it works, but there's always something better that's going to come about. And so you should never be restricted to, you should never be thing to change. Like you should always be willing to change and willing to adapt to the new practices and the new things that are coming about because you're teaching different generations as you go, right? I've like taught, like I said, nearly 12 years of different kids. Like I have kids that I are now like in their adulthood, like, working and, making money
Wow.
that from my first year of teaching. And so the generations are changing and so you're going to see a different set of kids and so you have to change with them. Like if you are resistant to change, you are not going to be able, like, you're going to find it really hard. And so being able to be fluid a little bit with how you navigate with the kids, yeah, that's
So
like
final two
important.
questions, because I didn't one of it's one of those things I also didn't think about. It's like, wow, like the multi-generational thing and how much you have to change yourself as the generations change, as technology changes, as society changes around you is so fascinating. So second to last question, and this may kind of bleed into what you were just talking about, but how has being a teacher shaped how you see people? Because you have the psych background, but then you actually are applying, living, breathing it. So if it has, how has it changed how you see people or life in general?
I think giving people grace and just being kind.
Mm,
I think recognizing that everybody has the potential to meet those standards, but everybody's also going through things.
mm,
And I think it doesn't matter if they're an adult, they're children. Children are also going through things, and like we don't really know what their lives are, right? Like kids are experiencing parent struggle, kids are experiencing sibling struggle, kids are experiencing their own struggles. And I think being able to give people grace and be able to be humble and just being able to be kind, like basic necessity, like the basic qualities required for human interaction. Like I think that is something that I've learned to like continue to pursue. And actually, and more importantly, I think like this, I think I spoke to this earlier, like creating safe spaces for the kids, right? Um, I always want to be someone that that people around me feel safe around because that's because life is rough, life's rough out here. And so when we interact with people, like I want to make sure that they don't feel judged and they don't feel like criticized and like they feel safe to be who they are because they're probably going through it. And so I feel like that's something that I've learned a lot in this practice.
Last question. And I love the one about grace, by the way, the point about grace, because I think sometimes too, a lot of us see the world through our internal lens. It's like we see, I've heard this once and it has lived rent free in my mind ever since about we are all the star of our own life movie. And so we perceive everything from our perspective. Like if someone snaps at you, you think it's because they have a problem with you. And to your point, it could be, their parent snapped at them that day or their sibling beat them up or whatever it was. And now it's like a chain reaction thing and has really nothing to do with you. So I love that you talked about just kind of giving people grace. Final question. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about this profession, about teaching, what would it be?
To not settle for, I think I always go back to the first time that I took my first job offer. Like I wish I like didn't settle for the first opportunity that um was given. That's like number one, just like being patient with that. And then also number two is um like even though things, I think just telling myself that even if things are rough, like just keep going through. Like it'll there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Um, but honestly, I wouldn't change anything either. I love every step of my experience. I think it like really like shaped me to who I am today and being able to be the teacher that I am today. Because I think without those experiences, I wouldn't be here. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Zainab, for being so incredibly generous with your time and taking the time to educate me today. I learned so much. Um, and if you guys want to see more about Zainab or follow her, you can find her on Instagram at ZEENK526 on Instagram, and I'll make sure it's in the description box. Thank you so much, Zainab.